Okay, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm Elizabeth Parks. I'm the president and CMO of Parks Associates, and I welcome you to our 20th Annual Connection Summit. I hope you've heard some of the sessions we hosted earlier today. This session today is focused in on connectivity and understanding the role of the home network and a little bit about the competition in the broadband market. So today we're really going to be focused on what's going on with broadband and the home network, and specifically talking about the different types of Wi-Fi that's out there, the reliability of the network, the important role the router is playing for broadband service providers, and talking about the future of the connected home and what that means for connectivity players. So I have an amazing lineup of gentlemen who are going to introduce themselves after I share a little bit of research, really representing unique points in the market with what they work on. And so I think this is going to be really great perspectives for you all. One thing that is critical to understand is that the broadband market right now is so competitive. Speeds are not what's, there's plenty of speed, right? That's not what the problem is anymore. People they don't really need 10 gigs of speed at home. And broadband service providers are going to have to move to differentiate themselves in this new world to retain and maintain and grow their subscriber base. And so I really wanted to show this piece of research. And remember, Parks Associates surveys 8,000 US internet households every 3 months. We've been doing that for at least a decade. Before that, it was 5,000 households quarterly, 2,000 households, 1,000 households. These are internet surveys. Before that, we called people. When there was no internet, we still were doing consumer survey work representative of the United States. So when we ask consumers, why do you switch providers? What are the factors that would make you turn from one provider to another? You can see these answers here and showing the bundle as a huge driver of switching, and then secondarily advanced Wi-Fi features. So this is a lot of what we're going to be talking about. These are value-added services that can be bundled together and that will help create a new and different valuable experience for the consumer at home. We're also going to touch upon the role of the many, many devices in the home, and at Parks Associates we are tracking 3 separate categories. We track the consumer electronics category, the smart home device category, and the connected health category. Right now we show 48%, almost half of all households in the United States have at least one smart home device, and at Parks Associates we strongly believe that these devices in the home are going to play a critical role when we talk about the network and broadband providers. So that is what the conversation is today, and I'm very excited to be here and moderate, and would love to start off with brief introductions, starting with Olivier. So thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. Good. I'm Olivier Bernard. I work for AWS, where I lead our market strategy for consumer and smart home products. Most people don't know that AWS has a very, very strong footprint in smart home and devices connected. We have billions of devices on our platforms, and any given day we've got about 400 million devices that connect to our platform for different services. So we have a lot of services that feeds from the home to the cloud to enable new delivery services, such as routers.
Great, thank you so much. Andy, go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thanks for hosting today's session. Hello, everybody. I'm Andy McFarlane from Sydney in Australia. So 17-hour flight to get across to here. And Morse Micro are a semiconductor business. The category, we focus on a thing called Wi-Fi Halo. You all know Wi-Fi. It's been the most astounding success. It always makes us smile, and for the last 25 years, great, I've got a Wi-Fi connection, that's fantastic. And then you run out of your Wi-Fi connection because you've gone past a wall or 2 or 20 or 30 meters, and you shrug and you go, oh, lost my Wi-Fi. We're the bit that fixes that. So we're a sub 1 gigahertz Wi-Fi connectivity layer, and we're good at 10, 20, 30 megabits per second for up to a kilometer. So standard Wi-Fi, accredited Wi-Fi, 802.11 AH, everything that you want in secure Wi-Fi long distance, which when we come to talk about smart home penetration, it's a really interesting and exciting space.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that introduction. Kevin, we'll go with you next.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kevin Robinson, the President and CEO for Wi-Fi Alliance. Wi-Fi Alliance is the worldwide network of companies that brought you Wi-Fi. So obviously many of these, I think actually all these companies here are members, but it's really kind of who's who in the connectivity space. We've been around for over 25 years, and one of the most important things we do, in addition to defining what really is Wi-Fi, because we own the mark for Wi-Fi, it is bringing companies together to, again, evolve the technology and ensure that it ultimately delivers a good experience for the end user. So we manage something called Wi-Fi Certified, which is the interoperability standard to ensure that all generations of Wi-Fi work well, and you can buy products from any brands you wish.
Okay, excellent. And Dave, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure, my name is Dave Wexler. I'm Chief Business Officer at Plume. Plume is basically Wi-Fi management services. So when you buy internet connectivity from your ISP, the gateway that they send you probably has Plume software on it, managing all the different devices in your home to make sure you've got the best possible Wi-Fi performance. Plume's in about 450 ISPs globally, about 40 million homes. And in addition to that Wi-Fi management layer, we also provide a series of value-added services so ISPs can provide opportunities to change your password, manage who's on your network, who isn't, establish guest networks, all that kind of good stuff.
Great, excellent to have you here. Okay, I want to start the conversation just talking about what some of the basic improvements are that we're seeing right now in Wi-Fi, and I think starting off and really talking about Wi-Fi 7 a little bit. So Kevin, I'd like to come with you first and share a little bit with the audience on where we are with Wi-Fi 7 coming, and then just the growing role of Wi-Fi and the improvements that we're seeing across the board.
Well, really, I think, so first of all, Wi-Fi 7 is today's generation of Wi-Fi. And really, where we are as an industry, and you laid this out pretty well where you say, okay, yes, we have 10 gigabit per second broadband, you can get it, but how much do you really need that type of performance? And so for the industry, it's much more of a focus now on how do you deliver high performance, but also consistent, reliable high performance. And really it began with Wi-Fi 6, but increasingly with Wi-Fi 7, and then moving into Wi-Fi 8. That's really what it's about. Now you're still getting performance improvements, but with Wi-Fi 7, it's how do we get closer to a more deterministic type of experience. So you have very high reliability, very, very low latency, and consistent low latency, in the single-digit millisecond, but consistently. And that's really kind of where we're going. So Wi-Fi 7 has things like multi-link operation that allows you to have redundancy, and if you lose a packet in one band, another packet can ultimately get through. So again, very high levels of quality of service. I think the other interesting thing, and also many of you in the audience might think, well, really how relevant is Wi-Fi 7 to the smart home, particularly as you get into more IoT type devices? They don't need 10 gigabits per second. They don't even need a gigabit per second. Many of them need hundreds of kilobits per second, right? But what we've just recently announced at CES this year is a specific profile of Wi-Fi 7 for these more constrained devices. So smaller channel widths, but they still get all those same benefits that come with Wi-Fi 7. So those other capabilities like MLO as an example. And so again, I think Wi-Fi 7 is today's generation of Wi-Fi, and it's going to help deliver that more consistent experience that ultimately is necessary as that foundation for many of the services that are ultimately going to be built on top of Wi-Fi. Because that's, at the end of the day, that's where a lot of the differentiation is going to increasingly happen, is at the service or application layer. And so what can we do as an industry to make sure that that foundation is absolutely rock solid, whether it's with Wi-Fi 7 or with also things like Wi-Fi Halo in the sub-gigahertz band.
Yeah, and I think that reliability and consistency is so important in the smart home. That's one of the things we hear from consumers that is one of their biggest problems is the Wi-Fi, the network's down, it's slow, there's some kind of problem there on the network. And so, Dave, I want to come over to you and get your perspective on where things are when we think about Wi-Fi and the managed network.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been in this space for some time, and this concept of value-added services was always high priority for ISPs, but in fact, ISPs sold on speed and bundling pricing. But to the point just made, I think we're at a point now where that doesn't really win the hearts and minds of consumers quite as much. We're kind of at that peak speed moment. And as your data proves, people are much more interested in those value-added services packages finally. So I think what most ISPs will be thinking about, as well as consumers, is how do we finally really bundle a solution that customers want to buy and spend more money on. The ISP market's not going to be one anymore. We've got faster speeds, or even, I think, we've got cheaper rates. I think the market is kind of saturated with new opportunities. It's more about reliability and a quality of an overall service offering. And certainly at Plume, and I'm sure we're all thinking a lot about this, how do we help our customers deliver that better promise, that kind of more rich experience to their consumers so they retain their customers longer? And that's I think where the entire industry is finally focused after talking about it for 20 years.
Well, and we are at a different point in time, right? Because we were talking about the ISPs and value-added services back in 2010 and 2008 and 2012. We did all that, even the launch of security with broadband. But what's different now? What would you say is different now than then, and this opportunity?
Well, from a tech perspective or from an ISP perspective, like a market perspective?
I
think the market perspective, the market's perspective, it's clear. Like, I can't just sell faster because faster isn't going to win more business. I have to sell better. I have to sell a more of a solution. I have to sell something that just performs better. But from a tech perspective, I think we're actually delivering that proposition as well. Again, like I think many years ago, we talked about this, but speed is what always kind of won out. And now I think because of smart home demands, because of different kinds of expectations around latency, like with video conferencing and all that, people want quality much more than just raw speed. And I think it's finally a maturation of the market that we all thought would happen 10 years ago, but it's really finally happening. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and ultimately it's more value that's being delivered, right? Broadband service providers have to be provide more value to retain their customers, and I'd probably say every company in the room needs to probably provide more value these days to retain and keep and grow their customer base, because that's the world we live in. So Andy, let's go over to you and see if you can talk a little bit about Wi-Fi Halo and how that extends to the IoT when we're thinking about the consumer.
Yeah, so absolutely, thank you. People talk about Wi-Fi Halo in the world of IoT, absolutely. But in this world, I much prefer the language of reliability, quality of service, fit for purpose service in and around the house. You touched on it earlier on. Speed is great and really exciting, but remote door locks don't need that. Wireless video cameras on the back fence don't need that. The highest return rate for video cameras at the moment are cameras by a garage, because you can't get meaningful connection there because there's a lot of metal and a lot of concrete. So in the weakest point of security for your property, you park one of your most expensive assets. That's just not good. And if the weakness can be overcome by improving the Wi-Fi penetration and full property Wi-Fi, then you can move to a much more mature evolution of smart home. So I much prefer thinking about the service that we all want in the right place on your property, not delivering service where Wi-Fi can get to. So speed has been fantastic. Speed has been really, really important over the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years. But there's only so much speed you need, and you need certain kinds of speed in certain parts of your property. In the rest of the property, you want reliable connectivity and you need the right kind of quality of service. That's absolutely where Wi-Fi Halo can, frankly, fill the gaps, fill the map. Very comfortably, 99% of all American properties we can cover with a single access point per property. That's really exciting coverage at really low cost. So for any broadband manufacturer, any router manufacturer, any ISP that wants to be able to talk about a unique proposition of full property coverage, and this tiny little cost addition, it's now a simple step. And it's a step that we can take that's interoperable and standard because of the work of the team at the Wi-Fi Alliance. So it fills a really important gap, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, consistency and reliability equals trust, right? And that's why people want to have their products be reliable and have consistent products to market that work reliably, because then you're a trusted provider. So that trust is very important when we think about the smart home and that consumer experience. Olivier, I want to come over to you and see if you can share. You can share all sorts of things here, but let's just talk about how, you know, all these different devices are in the home. You've got all this data in the background. You've got the reliability and then the convergence and the integration. And what is going to happen when all of this gets combined with cloud intelligence and the power and value that can come through?
Right, so first I'll start with an overview of the consumer, right? And the consumers have come to accept that Wi-Fi should just work. It should work all the time, it should be fast, it should be broad, it should be reliable, latency should be low. And because of these expectations, there is no way to differentiate yourself with Wi-Fi technology. You have to differentiate yourself with something else. And for us, that something else is new services. So one of the big pain points that we see our consumers, both OEMs and consumers having, is they connect their product to the home, it works for a little while, something happens and it no longer works. And so we have customers that have had 90% connectivity rate when devices get on of the box. That drops to about 40% after 6 months. And they have no way to go recovering them. And so for them, it's sort of a tax, because they ship those products with Wi-Fi technology that cost money in development and building of materials, and nobody uses them. And for the OEM, there is a lot of value in knowing how your devices are being used, so that you can perform better devices, develop better devices, double down on features that are very popular. And for the consumers, it's convenient. So one of the services we're really looking at is, the deployments of automated agents and services on the gateways, so that you can do automatic onboarding. You bring a device, you plug it into power, it just connects to the network and it's ready to use. Then there is a whole slew of new services that you can develop with the more modern gateways. Things like Wi-Fi sensing, where you can actually substitute services for aging in place, for example, or you can, this morning there was discussion about security. One of the big problems with security is you get a lot of false alarm, and there is no way to validate this. So if you dispatch security at your home because you got a false alarm, it's a really heavy sunk cost. With the modern Wi-Fi technology that is being deployed and repeaters, and that's going away. So there's a lot of new services that can be deployed on those. And that transforms the gateway from a connectivity device to basically your smart home hub.
So, so the router as a smart home hub, are all these different major devices in the home trying to become the smart home hub?
I would say a lot of people are trying to do that. They're trying to capture a lot of mind shares. Right now, I think most of the devices that don't have a screen have given up on that idea. But a lot of people who have screens, that is the major interface, visual AI interface, still think they can control the whole home from that screen. So it goes for Alexa Show, but people who have smart fridges with big screen think they can be the central hub. Obviously, all the TV providers are thinking we should be the provider. And then you got all of those screens for pictures and display and information. They all vie for that role. So there's a lot of battling going on there. But I think endpoints and devices is probably not going to be the hub. Right? Like, so for example, if you want to onboard Matter devices, you need to have a Matter hub. And then if you have other technology devices, Z-Wave or Zigbee, then you need to have that gateway that's going to make the translation into the Wi-Fi router that's going to allow you to access it from outside the home.
So the home just keeps getting more complicated, really, for the consumer, and the router is a point, perhaps, of simplification and a lot of added value with what it can do.
The home is already too complicated for most consumers.
Yeah.
Like my wife literally said, if something happens to you, I sell the house because nothing's gonna work. I'm leaving this house, that's it. So it's too complicated. And on the other hand, we have people like ourselves that really want to see more devices in the home. If we want to have more devices in the home, we need to make it a lot simpler for people to adopt those devices, onboard those devices, automate those devices, and make sure they work for the homeowner as opposed to a homeowner working for his smart home.
Yeah, and ultimately what we're talking about really is the OS of the home. And that's where it gets really interesting when you talk about these major players everywhere and who is going to have that ultimate control, which is also built upon partnerships and different integrations. Dave, I want to come over to you and see if you can share a little bit more about these new capabilities that are getting built into the router and how this ends up shifting the consumer experience as well as what the offering is to the consumer.
Yeah, so you mentioned cloud before, and I think what cloud allows is a sense of analytics and data collection across an entire footprint that creates new services itself. So I think in the home we see things like Wi-Fi sensing, as Olivier mentioned. We see new management opportunities, new ways to work with devices, but I think as we bring all the data up to the aggregate and start looking at that via AI, we're going to find new use cases. I know from a vendor perspective, we think these are all very important, and we're providing a lot of these on our software stack for ISPs to think about everything from device management like IoT enablement, IoT platforming, to Wi-Fi sensing, which may be used, as Olivier said, in elder care or home security. But I suspect it goes even beyond this. Use cases that we haven't even thought of yet, especially as we think about interoperability and kind of the learnings that we have primarily through AI about all the data sets going into the cloud. And it sounds a little bit far-fetched, but these are the areas that I think ISPs now are getting very interested in. Like IoT enablement. I think it was something that we always talked about as an ISP use case, but again, took back seat to faster speeds, but now it's front and center, at least with the customers that we talk to, all of these things that we've mentioned. How do I monetize these features and provide a better experience for my customer? So it's a pretty broad range, and I suspect that at each successive CES or Parks conference, we'll hear more and more new ideas off this data in ways that we've probably never thought of before.
Excellent. Kevin, I'd love to hear your view of this transformation of the router and what that means for the consumer experience.
Sure. Well, I think one of the key trends really came around post-pandemic, right, where people really started to understand how important Wi-Fi was. You know, they were working from home. Now their ability to go to work was dependent on the quality of their Wi-Fi. And so they were willing to invest in higher performance Wi-Fi infrastructure. You combine that with kind of a long-term trend around more and more people are now getting their Wi-Fi as a managed service from their service provider. And in part due to pioneers like Plume who really beat that drum around the quality, the quality of the experience and the opportunity for the service provider. So kind of I think with those trends, you now have these incredibly capable and powerful, quite frankly, very powerful Wi-Fi gateways and routers that can do so much more. They have things like Wi-Fi sensing. They have ranging, so you can determine, you can triangulate, determine location of devices within a home or ranges to devices. Are you in the driveway or are you in the home, et cetera. Sensing to the point where we've seen demonstrations where they've used Wi-Fi in a vehicle that could actually detect the rise and fall of an infant's chest if they get left in the backseat of a car, right? So really a safety of life type of application. And all things are possible because of all these capabilities that are built into the Wi-Fi equipment. And I think it's important because now you're able to leverage the same investment in that Wi-Fi chip and other technology for many other things, right? So now it's a kind of a multi-use technology that is underpinning a lot of different services. So I think that's kind of a lot of the trends we're seeing. The telemetry and much of similar to what Plume has done. An industry is now looking to standardize pretty much everything we develop, whether it's Wi-Fi 7, the generational technologies, whether it's sensing, location. How do we actually create data models around those technologies in a standardized way that can then feed to the service provider so they can develop services no matter what vendor they're using for their underlying infrastructure. So I think there are a lot of really interesting trends that are going to really provide the building blocks and the toolkit for service providers or others to deliver on these services.
Yeah, and just to add a quick point, I used to work at a tier 1 ISP, and the theory was always get the pipe to the house, and in the house it was kind of like another world, right? Like the ISP cared about what happened in the house, but didn't really, because the demarcation was the gateway, the router. Now it's a very old belief, right? If your quality of service stinks in the house, the customer will churn regardless of how solid that infrastructure is outside of the house. So telemetry, understanding where point of failures can happen, creating a better quality service is priority 1 for the ISP, and then priority 2, but quickly becoming 1, is the value-added services on top of it. And now they really care about that device that's in the house. They care about the hardware itself, not just the price, but the performance. They care about getting better software on it to ensure that that performance is optimized. So I think it's a new world, and it's an exciting world because of it.
Yeah, really good point. I think another point, if you think about the utilities, they're in a similar position, maybe a little further away than the broadband providers, but they used to just think about, utility to house, and now because of data centers, because of the problem that's going to happen with energy, they're going to have to think about the home, and the home is about devices and the integration between them. So this in-home play is becoming more and more important to all of the service providers who are serving the consumer, not just broadband. Also insurance services, right? What's it about? It's about the devices in the home that can mitigate the risk and stop the fire and stop the water leaks, right? That's what they're trying to do.
And to add to this, all the ISPs are trying to differentiate themselves, and they want to increase their RPU, generate more revenues, new services, and they can't do that if they're just a bit pipe.
Yeah, and let's talk about how do ISPs monetize these new capabilities. And Olivier, why don't you share what your view on that? And also, I'd like to talk a little bit about the tier 2 and tier 3 markets. The non-urban, the non-huge city markets. So, but let's start there.
Well, so as of today, the 2 major smart home services that people can monetize is security and I just lost it. Security and energy consumptions, right? So you got a bunch of companies that have access to data on cost of energy that will actually optimize your energy consumptions in your home based on you're charging your car or your solar panels on. So they have a very unique view on what is being consumed, what is being produced, and from the cloud, how much does energy cost? And they can optimize this. So if you can save $10 on your bill, and it's going to cost you $2 for that service, then it's a net win. In reality, we have a few customers that have deployed the services. They charge $10 a month, but they save about $50 to $60 a month in energy cost for their customers. So that's one service. Now, those are established. They're in production. People are making money out of those. But new services such as parental control, which is a real pain if you have a teenager in your home and you tell them go to bed and they're still on their phones or on their Wi-Fi network, you know how valuable that is. That's something that you can monetize. Another service is aging in place, right? A lot of us, sorry guys, a lot of us are going to age, and we're not going to want to go to another place. We're going to want to age at our home where it's comfortable, where we know everything. But our kids are going to be very worried that did we take our pills, did we fall in the bathtub, those kind of things. So those are new services that we will definitely be willing to pay. It doesn't exist that much yet, but those are new revenue streams that are enabled by new router technology, sensing locations. I mean, we love Wi-Fi 7 because the ranching allows us to say, turn this part of the house off. Done. So, all the kids' bedroom, turn it off. We want to still watch TV, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. And when you talk about the aging in place, we're sizing the market as 30 million caregivers, 30 million caregiver households in the United States, meaning they're caring for a loved one now or they plan to within the next 5 years. This is 30 million households out of 126 million households with internet. This is a huge population, right? And they have money to spend on their most precious thing they have, their parents, their great aunts, their great uncles, you know, the people they love. So we definitely see this independent living solution market coming, and the coordination between different devices within the smart home category has a very, very powerful offering that people will buy, and we've been testing that within some of our consumer research work. So it is a big deal, and it's important because there won't be enough places to house older people, and they don't want to go there, right? Nobody wants to go move to a home.
Right.
Like that's not what people want. So, Andy, let's come back to you and see if you can share some of your perspective on this monetization and, you know, how challenged are the ISPs right now with bringing new offers to the market, and where do you think maybe the focus should be first for them?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. Prior to my time with Morse Micro, I was with Telstra in Australia. I ran their enterprise go-to-market for 6 years, and for 5 years before there with Vodafone, based out of Europe. So I know the telco world pretty well. Now I'm not employed by a telco, I can say where there's pain, there's a money opportunity. Yeah, and you've touched on the points of pain earlier on. So maybe one, I just want to take your, because security I've touched on, we've spoken about a little bit. Let's just think about energy. It was how you framed the question earlier on. And there's absolutely an energy utilization within the house, but there's also a house and neighborhood orientation to that. This is still, the utility industry speaks about AMI, Advanced Meter Infrastructure, and that's been with us for 10, 15 years. There's now an AMI 2.0, Advanced Meter Infrastructure 2.0. In Australia, November of last year, the legislation came through. Every new smart meter in Australia is going to have to upload and download data every 5 seconds on utilization. And that's because of the prevalence of solar panels, EVs, batteries. The highly centralized grid as was is no longer that. It's the virtual power plant, etc., that puts massive pressure on that smart meter. And, you know, with respect, the current technologies in that smart meter cannot ship the data that's required every 5 seconds or every minute, as is required in the US at the moment. So energy management at a single property level, energy management at a neighborhood level, and through open standards and the work of community teams like the Wi-Fi Alliance, there's an opportunity for broadband providers, for ISPs, to think materially differently and help out with a growing, a currently significant and increasingly growing point of pain. Because where there's pain, there's monetary opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of really good points there. And when we think about the role of the cloud and the experience that consumers are having at home, along with, you know, the average household having 17 connected devices in their home, but that's average, right? So I think I have 60 or something connected devices in my home with 3 teenagers who, you know, so this complexity that continues to be there has new requirements that are creating this transformation, and as you all have noted several different times, use the word enabled, right? Enabling a new set of features and value to be shared with that customer and paid for, right? So Kevin, let's come back over to you and see if we can talk about hybrid networks. And first of all, maybe tell us what that means from your perspective, and why the smart home experience is really ending up using a mix of solutions to ensure all of that reliability and consistency.
So as much as I wish that every single smart home device used Wi-Fi, it's just not the reality. And we're very kind of open about that. Is in the smart home, it's going to be a hybrid network. It's going to be a collection of technologies. Even if you look at the Matter ecosystem, it's Wi-Fi and Thread, right, ultimately being used. So that is going to be the standard going forward. It's technologies that are fit for purpose. We personally think that Wi-Fi is, you know, very compelling for a large number of in fact, probably the majority of those use cases, but it's going to be a combination. But I think the trends you're going to see, and I think Matter is a good example of this, is you finally had some of these technologies that were really not internet technologies finally starting to adopt internet protocols. It's one of the compelling things about Wi-Fi Halo is that it is just Wi-Fi in every other respect, except for that it operates in sub 1 gigahertz. And so more and more as we get these hybrid networks, you're going to be looking at protocols that leverage just standard internet technologies to be able to natively speak to the cloud or service providers. And that is going to be that fabric ultimately. Now, Wi-Fi, I think, in a lot of ways can be that infrastructure even within the home that allows maybe a thread device to communicate to a hub, and then ultimately traffic going over a Wi-Fi network to another access point in a mesh system, and then to another thread device, things like that. So these networks have become much more complicated, just like the internet is fairly complex in terms of an interworking of networks. And I think ultimately that is where the smart home is going to go. Because having these siloed technologies where they have their own protocols, they can only speak to another device within that family, simply are not going to scale. And that scale is going to be necessary for the success of the smart home, just like the success of the internet.
And if I may add to this,
Yeah, please.
one of the limitation of Wi-Fi, it's a local protocol, right? So one of the value that you have from the smart home is the ability to control and orchestrate your smart home away from home. Here in Vegas, my home is in California. So that's going to mandate to have hybrid type of technology, and that's where the cloud is actually really good at normalizing all this communication. So whether you're communicating through satellite with Kuiper or with your cell phone and cellular connectivity or an ISVs at home, you need to have that architecture.
Yeah.
But that can be very seamless when you're ultimately an internet protocol, right?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
immediately
Absolutely.
I'm roaming off of my Wi-Fi network onto a 5G network. I still have the ability to
matter.
do everything I need to
It
do.
doesn't matter.
And on that, and just taking it back a little bit, ISPs right now are very interested in mobile convergence as well, or network convergence.
Yeah.
Every ISP customer of ours is interested in Wi-Fi failover. So basically, your fiber connection goes down, your actual cell phone or some fixed wireless access picks up that connectivity, especially if the ISP has their own phone network, and then they're thinking about things like mobile offload as well. Yeah. So ISPs are no longer just in the fiber broadband delivery. They're thinking a lot about these converged network opportunities and how the consumer has a seamless experience regardless of their performance. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing this total convergence happening in standards in the house and outside the house as well.
And seamless is a keyword. You don't care whether it was carried on cellular, Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
you
100%.
care, you're connected, it works the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and one other point to make is that we do see, a very popular new bundle is mobile plus fixed. We now see, I think, 26% of households taking that bundle together, which has really been a dramatic increase, right? So it's providing more value. Now I'm your internet at home, I'm your internet wherever you are with your phone, and it's in a bundle, and now I know a lot more about you too, because I got all this data in the background to figure out what to offer you next, because I understand how to serve you as a customer.
Well, it goes, if you don't mind me saying, it goes right the way back to where the conversation started on reliability and quality of service. That's why those choices are coming through. Because if you have one service from one provider, another over there, that failover, you just don't have that reliability and quality of service across your full property that ultimately is what people are looking for.
Absolutely, really good points. And to add on to that, we're also seeing power outages really for the first time within our consumer survey work as being a real problem, right? That the reason why they don't have internet is because they don't have power. And so then we got backup power coming, right? And maybe even mandated, like there could be mandates where broadband providers must provide some kind of backup power, which will be interesting for those backup power players, right? Because if it's mandated, just like if water leak detectors are mandated in certain states for new homes, then we'll see more than 4% adoption because they have to be built in. So there's a lot of things that happen also that impact the market. Okay, we're going to do a quick round of questions here. I just have a couple for you all, so I'm going to start with you, Kevin, go down. What is the top driver of broadband churn?
Simple one, poor experience.
Poor experience,
Poor
okay?
experience.
Yeah, same poor experience.
what else is there? It's fundamentally that. People will pay premium, people will pay a little bit more, but ultimately, if it's too frustrating, no.
Yeah.
Complexity of setup.
Complexity of setup. Okay. And I think it probably takes a lot. For people to switch your broadband, it's like switching your bank account. Like people don't probably actually want to do that, right? Because it is a pain in the butt to do. So
I mean, if you have 40 devices in your home, you're going to have to reprogram all 40 devices.
Yeah.
We did it.
And
Yeah.
And when you leave, you're not coming back.
Right.
I mean,
So there's a lot of ways to try and meet your customer and make them happy and keep them, right? Because the alternative for them is to go somewhere else, which is a real big pain in the butt. Okay, so how do older devices drag down speeds? And let's start with you, Olivier, over here.
How do older devices? You mean auto technology, Wi-Fi related, or Thread, Zigbee, Z-Wave?
Well, assuming you have all this speed coming into the home, and then you have all these different devices in the home, is there a drag that comes on the network because of the devices that are attached to it?
So because of the IoT devices, very unlikely. Usually the big consuming media devices like gaming or TVs are the ones that hog the bandwidth, or video application. But most smart home devices do not drag at all. There is no impact.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll disagree with that one. I'll say your network's only as strong as its weakest link, which is why I spoke earlier on about a fit-for-purpose network for where you want. So we're getting increasing interest from ISPs who are realizing that 2.4 gigahertz channel is incredibly busy and growing. The 2030 number of devices that you spoke about, they're there. And if there's one or two devices on the edge of that screaming, they're constantly screaming, and every other device in the house is impacted. So how about you take the ones that are hidden behind concrete, behind the wall, put them in a different protocol. I'll offer up Wi-Fi Halo because it's open standards and connects. But then you open up 2.4 to deliver a better service. You can have a different grade of domestic connectivity, and you can have the right quality of service for the right kind of delivery across the full property.
Okay.
Yeah, we offer device ID, which is the fingerprinting. So you can say, oh, I can see my child's game station on the internet right now. And we are seeing all the time old printers constantly falling offline, going back online, offline, online, looking for software updates, creating a ton of noise. That kind of stuff we think needs to be resolved, and I do think there's some opportunity. It may not always propagate itself in massive downgrades and speed performance, but it creates a lot of network noise that just shouldn't be there and does cause problems in the end.
Okay.
Sure, absolutely it does. I mean, Wi-Fi, it's a shared medium, right? So just like anything else, if one device is taking a really long time to talk, right, that means another user's not speaking. Frankly, I have a neighbor who, your exact scenario with the security camera, he wanted it pointing back at his house, and I have a 2.4 gigahertz channel that is unusable. And it's not that camera needs super high throughput, it's that it is at its absolute maximum range, and it is transmitting at just fast enough, but it's occupying the medium, which means my other devices, my pool controller, et cetera, have a difficult time getting on the medium. So, and it's something that I think as an industry, it's hard to make this case because again, a printer doesn't need that much throughput, a sensor doesn't need that much throughput. So how do you convince device manufacturers that they should invest in newer generations of Wi-Fi when it's more of an altruistic, right? Because it doesn't really directly benefit their device, but it means that the overall system in that home network is going to operate better. Going right back to what I started off with, it's one of the reasons why we have this kind of profile for Wi-Fi 7 where they can have more constrained devices, but still take advantage of the efficiencies that come with Wi-Fi 7. It's one of the reasons why we like Wi-Fi Halo, because it gets those devices into a spectrum band that is more appropriate for them, which frees up spectrum for 2.4 gigahertz devices. It's why we move high performance devices into 6 gigahertz, right? So every device, you know, the system works better if we optimize for the system performance, not just think about one device in isolation.
Okay, excellent comments. Okay, our final question, and we're going to start with you, Kevin. We'll end with Olivier. How should ISPs or device companies, either or, whatever you want to answer, differentiate themselves moving forward? Big, broad question.
I mean, we've said it a number of times on this panel. It's going to be about, they're not going to differentiate on those kind of lower level things that technologies like Wi-Fi deliver, right? I mean, that needs to be table stakes. The connectivity itself needs to be foundational. We as ecosystem participants need to adopt standardized approaches, standardized technologies, and then differentiate at the higher levels. It's going to be the services that you can deliver, but in order to differentiate there, you need to quit, spinning your wheels and investing in things that are already standardized, that are already table stakes. Place your focus higher up into the services and applications.
ISPs deliver a bundle, a solution for the customer that's very easy to adopt and easy to use. IoT manufacturers know your role. Don't try to go outside of it. Make connecting to the network easy, using the device easy, and don't try to own every piece of the IoT experience in the house.
Yeah. Commit to open standards and then be brilliant marketers. Really understand where the pain is by segment, because your students have very different needs from your home carers, from your large properties, from properties where security are critical needs. Their needs, their smart home needs are very, very different. Your studies are phenomenal at laying that out. This category has been around for 25 years. The recipients are constantly better armed in terms of an understanding of what their needs are. We should serve them better by delivering a better fit-for-purpose quality of service. We've got some growing up to do.
Excellent.
For me, it's all about making the technology invisible, working for the consumers, what we call invisible automations, and ease of use, convenience. So if the routers or the devices set themselves up, discover devices in a house, set them up, and then the user interface is really easy to use to add more services, then that's a win.
Excellent, and that comment reminds me of one of our keynote speakers, Dave Puckett, who's the global technology leader for Comcast, who said at our Connections conference a couple years ago, technology will be invisible in the future, and that's part of our goal. And so perfect comment to end. This was an amazing session. Thank you guys so much for a great conversation. If you would, a round of applause for our panelists.